Parvana's Journey, Chapter 19. We have hundreds of people a day flooding in here, the nurse in the Red Crescent Clinic said to Parvana and the others as she took charge of Hassan. Things were bad enough already. Then someone dropped a bomb on our supply depot. Tents, blankets, food, and medicine all went up in smoke before... Will Hassan be all right? Asif asked. The nurse had Hassan stripped, washed, and diapered with a few quick, practiced movements. He's suffering from severe malnutrition and dehydration, she said, putting a needle into Hassan's arm and taping it down. What does that mean? Asif asked. It means he's hungry and thirsty, the nurse said. I know that, Asif almost yelled. I asked you if he's going to be all right. We'll do the best we can, she said, and she began to head off to another patient. That's no answer. Asif stuck out his crutch to block her way, and for once Parvana was glad for his rudeness. The nurse stopped and turned around. He's in very bad shape, she said. I don't know if he'll be all right or not. I've seen sick babies like him recover, though, so don't lose hope. Now I'm sorry, but you'll have to leave. Asif lowered himself to the floor beside Hassan's crib. Parvana and Layla sat down beside Asif. Where's the rest of your family? The nurse asked. Where it, Parvana said. The nurse nodded. Don't get in the way, she said, but gently. The clinic was just a big tent. They had stood in line for hours to get in. From her spot on the floor, Parvana couldn't see much of what was going on, but she could hear the moans and the weeping and the sounds from the camp that filtered in under the tent canvas. Asif and Layla stretched out on the floor under Hassan's crib and were soon asleep, but Parvana was quite content to sit. She felt as though she could sit for the rest of her life. The nurse came back after a while. Here's another blanket for you. Don't tell anyone you got it here. There aren't enough to go around, and we don't want a riot on our hands. She also gave Parvana some bread and mugs of tea. You won't be able to stay here all the time, but you can for now. For now sounded fine to Parvana. You're not Afghan, she said to the nurse who spoke Dari with a foreign accent. I am from France, the nurse said. I am here in Afghanistan with a French relief agency. Do you know the fields of purple flowers? Parvana asked, so excited that she gripped the nurse's arm. My friend Shazia is going there. Do they really exist? Yes, I have seen the fields, the nurse said. The flowers are called lavender. They are made into perfume. Your friend picked a beautiful spot to go to. Now drink your tea while it's hot. Wake up your brother and sister. They should have a hot drink. They can sleep later. Parvana woke them up. They drank the tea and went back to sleep. Parvana spent the night hovering between sleeping and waking. She would start to drift off, then bombs would explode in the distance. Or she would start to dream that they were still walking, and she would wake up again. Every time she did, she checked on Hassan. He looked so small in the crib with a tube sticking out of him. Sometimes when she got up, Asif was already standing there watching the baby. After a couple of days, the hospital was so crowded that the nurse had to ask the children to leave. I'm sure we can find some families who will take you in with them. We'll just stay outside the clinic, Parvana said. We want to stay near our brother. The nurse gave them a letter. The World Food Program has set up a bakery on the other side of camp. Give them this letter and you'll be able to get some bread every day. Well, almost every day. I'll get food to you when I can, but it won't be very much or very often. As a final parting gift, she also gave them a piece of plastic sheeting. Parvana was grateful. She knew how to build a shelter with that. Outside the clinic, Parvana draped the plastic against the barrier separating the clinic from the rest of the camp. She made a little tent with enough plastic left over to line the floor. We've only been here a few days, and already we have food, shelter, and an extra blanket, and Hassan has seen a nurse, Parvana said, forcing her voice to sound cheerful. I don't like it here, Layla said. "It's noisy and crowded and it smells bad. Can't we go back to Green Valley? Maybe Grandmother is all right now. Maybe she's sitting on top of the hill waiting for us to come home." "We're here for the winter," Parvana said firmly. She didn't remind Layla that Grandmother was dead. "We're a family. We stick together. I'm the oldest, so you have to do what I say." She didn't add that her legs had no more steps in them. As bad as this place was, at least it was somewhere. There were grown-ups around, and the possibility of regular food. Besides, she wouldn't know where to go from here. "I'll go and get our bread," Asif offered. He was already lying down in the lean-to, coughing. Both he and Layla were coughing all the time now. "No, it's all right. I'll go," Parvana said. She didn't want to go. She didn't want to wade into the sea of desperate people. She knew from her experience at the other camps that going for bread or anything else meant standing in line for hours. She couldn't let Asif do it. "We need you here to guard our belongings," she told him. To Layla, she said, "You should stay here too, so that one of you can sleep while the other stands guard." She told them not to expect her back until the end of the day. Then she put her bag over her shoulder and headed off in the direction the nurse had shown them. Parvana's days fell into a pattern. She began to move through them as though she were dreaming. "Dear Shazia, I can't sleep at night. I doze off for a bit, then Asif coughs, or Layla coughs, or they cry out in nightmares, or the neighbors yell, and I wake up again. I can't sleep during the day because I have to spend my time standing in lines. Often my time in lines is wasted. 3 times I've lined up for bread, only to have the bakery run out before I got there. 2 days ago, there was a rumor that someone was in camp to choose people to go to Canada. I stood in that line all day, but nothing happened. The line fell apart, and I never found out if the Canada people were really here or not. Either way, I missed lining up for bread that day. When we first set up our lean-to, we were alone on that patch of ground. By the end of the day, when I got back with our bread, there was barely an inch of bare ground around our shelter. I couldn't find our place at first and ran around in a panic before finally getting home. Asif's cough is worse. Layla's cough is worse, and we are very cold at night. Hassan is getting better, though. Asif goes to see him every day, leaving Layla to guard our few things. He said yesterday that Hassan was able to grip his fingers and that he laughed when Asif made funny faces. He said there was another baby sleeping on a mat under Hassan's crib, so the nurse wasn't lying when she said there was no room for us. Everywhere I go, I look for my mother. I should do a proper search, tent to tent, but I spend all my time standing in lines. I'm not even going to hope that I'll find her. Hope is a waste of time. The nurse told me the purple fields of France really do exist. I hope you're there. I wish I was. Parvana put her notebook away and shuffled forward a few inches with the rest of the line. She really should be more grateful, she thought. After all, they weren't alone anymore, and a proper adult was caring for Hassan. She tried to make herself feel grateful as she stared out over the tents made of rags, stretching all the way to the horizon. "Excuse me, what is this line for?" a boy asked her. For a long moment, Parvana couldn't remember. She had been standing in the line for such a long time. "Water," she recalled, and held up the empty cooking oil can she had begged from someone else. Eventually, it was her turn at the water truck, and she lugged the full can back to the lean-to. The bombing was still going on, and refugees kept pushing their way into the camp, squeezing into every square inch of land. "Why do they have to squash in here?" Parvana complained, as new arrivals threatened to take over the children's lean-to. "There's a whole field on the other side of the clinic. Why don't they go there?" "It's a minefield," Asif said. "How do you know?" He looked at her with his usual scorn. "I know a lot of things you don't." Parvana felt as if she were back in the tiny one-room apartment she had shared with her family in Kabul. Whenever she got angry with Noria, there was nowhere to go to get away from her. Now, with all the bare ground being taken up with tents and shelters, there was nowhere to go to get away from Asif. She looked out the flap of the lean-to. Inches away was the neighbor's tent. The man and his wife were arguing loudly in a language Parvana didn't understand. "Is this it?" she wondered. "Have I come so far just to be here? Is this really my life?"